Shumë faleminderit për ditë, shumë kreative të gjuhës. Poesia e radhës është një shokian, është një person I cili është za për gratë, shumë pshadash në pas halon më shumë burra në këtë sepse çështjet e grave, vajzave të grave nuk janë çështje tona, janë çështje tona të përbashkëta. Po ka, Artani këtu, Kasioti, po shoh djem e kemi Tonin. Po duhet dëgjoj për Tonin. Toni është një autor bestseller, ka eksperiencë edhe në TED, në TEDx, është një njeri mrekullueshëm mbi të tana dhe ka një tregim të mrekullueshëm për neve sonte. Por Selimi.
Mirë mbrëma. Sonte do të jap këtë fjalim gjë në anglisht. Do të them faleminderit Adelinës, do ta shoh afër vitë. Good evening, everyone. Tonight's talk is about a journey that lives in all of us. How to move from our inherited pain to intentional prosperity. This talk is more than motivational talk. It's about rewriting the gender legacy carried across generations and stepping into a future shaped not by what we inherited, but by what we intentionally create every single day. Let me invite you into a place that for some of you, it may feel a bit uncomfortable. Because that's exactly where real transformation happens. You may wonder why. Because imagine a little girl watching her mother who keeps repeatedly apologizing for her existence. Imagine her seeing her mother losing her personal ambition to maintain harmony in the family. Imagine her watching her mother's dreams die. And she sees this in her mother repeatedly as she grows up. And she's innocently indoctrinated by her mother's experiences. And that little girl grows up. She becomes educated. She becomes capable. She becomes powerful. But somewhere in her nervous system lives a silent command that she learned by observing her experiences. Stay agreeable. Stay intimidated. Don't unshy. So what does this do to her? It makes her work twice as hard. She achieves, she earns, she leads, yet she feels tired, she feels exhausted. Because she's only leading an organization. She's leading against inheritance. She's leading against her own inner dialogue, which she inherited from her mother. And we don't consciously rewrite that inheritance, that internal dialogue, that negative dialogue will be replicated in your lives. Not through oppression, through unconscious repetition. Now, what if the greatest gender inequality in the world is not written in law, but wired into the nervous system of a woman? What if the real pay gap is not only financial, but emotional? And because before a woman ever negotiates her salary, before she walks into a boardroom, before she decides whether her voice is too much or maybe too little, her brain has already been trained. Trained by inner dialogue, trained by what she watched, trained by what she was rewarded, trained by what silenced her and in her mother. I know this because I grew up watching it. That's why I'm sharing this with you all. Because this was a very powerful part of my understanding of woman on earth, echoed and mirrored by my very own mother. I was born in Kosovar, Northern Macedonia, into a traditional Albanian Balkan family, shaped by duty, hierarchy, and internal and inherited roles. Very austere. My mother entered an arranged marriage, not for romance, not for self-expression, but for survival. And yet, within that system, she built something radical. She refused to pass her pain forward. Thank God. And that decision has changed generations. And certainly, it put me on the right path and being here sharing this with you all. Now picture this. It's summer 1998. I had not seen my parents for 8 years. 8 years of distance, 8 years of pain, 8 years of survival and struggle. 8 years between the life they imagined for me and the life I was actually trying to create. For a woman who had once been told education was unnecessary in my mother. For a woman who entered an arranged marriage, not for love, but for stability, watching her son graduate from University College London, that was simply pride, an Albanian mother's pride. This was generational breakthrough. It was history bending. It was sealing, cracking without noise. It was a movement away from the inner dialogue that had been so present to her entire life. Now, while they visited England, I took my mother and father to Brighton. She had never seen the ocean. She walked slowly towards the water. It was amazing to watch her, the childlike being, come alive. As the arrow shot, the sky was open, the sun was shining, the horizon was endless. And I was watching her, and she paused, as if unsure that she was allowed to approach something so vast. It was like she's never been here before, here in Brighton Beach. And she stepped forward, and she bent down, she touched the water, and she lifted her finger into her mouth and tasted the water. And she said, "It is salty." She looked at my dad and I, not embarrassed, not dramatic, but curious, humble, and innocent childlike face. And she said, "It's salty again." Now, for most people, this is a small detail and irrelevant, and so obvious that the sea is salty. But for me, it was seismic, because in that moment, I did not see a woman tasting a salt water. I saw a woman for the first time in her life tasting expansion. She was born into limitation, into expectation, into silence dressed as duty, into obedience disguised as virtue. And yet, within those constraints, she created expansion. She co-built a chain of restaurants that fed millions of people. With her extraordinary tenacity and power as a woman on earth, this was my mother. She raised children who would challenge ceilings she was never permitted to question. She built dignity where she was expected to shrink. She endured emotional hardships, physical abuse. She navigated pressure without applause. She absorbed criticism without retaliation. But she refused bitterness. And more importantly, she refused to pass the limitation forward. That taste of salt was not about the ocean. It was about inheritance. It was possibility. It was expansion. It was proof that life could be larger than the script she was handed. I was seeing my mother for the first time rewrite her own dialogue and coming alive, like her inner child came out. And this is what woman needs to do in every scenario. My mother had decided, quietly but powerfully, that inheritance would change. She did not speak on stages. She did not publish books. She did not advocate publicly. But she made one revolutionary decision. She chose not to let inherited pain define the next generation. She mastered her inner dialogue for the love of her children and family. This is prosperity. Not financial prosperity. This is legacy prosperity. And when we talk about gender equality, we focus on systems. But inequality begins in subtler places. It begins in living rooms. It begins in the nervous system. It begins with the childhood observations, and then our internal dialogue. Who apologizes first? Who sacrifices first? Who speaks? And who waits? Neuroscience now confirms that many of us now know trauma is inherited, but so is resilience. Beliefs are inherited, but so is courage. Patterns move through generation, not just through culture, but through emotional conditioning. Through what is rewarded, through what is tolerated, and through what is never named. So years later, as I began advising women, CEOs, founders, politicians, lawyers, artists, musicians, and global leaders, I saw the same invisible script playing out. So obviously in the pain of most women in these powerful positions. Brilliant women, exhausted from over-proving. Capable women, negotiating against an internal whisper saying, don't be too much. Successful women, negotiating against carrying the guilt for choosing their own ambition. Women like the Chirasi sisters, Mira Murati, Dua Lipa, Rita Ora, Yosa Osmani, and my dear friend Gyula Chiriku, the founder of the first women-led political party in Northern Macedonia. Women like Rita, Afrodita, women like Leonarda, Rainella, and of course, my very dear friend Adelina, that she's always been there into all the events that I've had supporting me and everybody around me. So big applause to you. These women live their lives on their terms. Women like my mother my sisters, Feliknas, Hanisha, Selimi, Drita, and many women around the world who stay at home to do the job 90% of men won't do. To raise a family of future leaders, change makers, and legacy creators. Women like you in this room, who are building careers and professions, sometimes at the cost of love and motherhood. This is what women on earth. This is her power. She has the power to endow that to her children. These women do not have personality flaws. They use survival codes embedded into their DNA. If a girl grows up watching her mother silence herself to keep the peace, she may silence herself in the boardroom. I've seen this over and over working with clients. If she grows up watching strength suppressed, she may fuel and fear her own power when she's out there in the world trying to succeed. If she grows up watching sacrifice without boundaries, she may burn out trying to earn what she already has. What feels personal is often ancestral. And here's the shift and the gift of what I wanted to share with you. What is inherited, it can be examined. And what is examined, it can be interrupted. And what is interrupted, it can be transformed. Now, later in my life, when I embraced my authentic identity, as an Albanian gay man, born into a very traditional family, I struggled. I even considered suicide. My mother did not immediately understand the language of identity, sexuality, or even modern discourse. She had no idea. We argued. We confronted generations of beliefs. But after months of intense conversations, she made another courageous choice. She chose love over conditioning. And from that moment, and in that decision, she dismantled centuries of rigidity. Now, from that moment forward, I committed to living and leading with unapologetic authenticity. That journey ultimately led me to publish 7 best-selling books: A Path to Wisdom, #Loneliness, The Unbreakable Code, Fit for Purpose Leadership, Novum 10, which are spiritual poems, A Path to Excellence, and my latest bestseller, Climb Greater Heights. I've also created 2 multi-award-winning documentaries, Living My Vision and The Truth Hurts, as well as the documentary about the truth about reading, which is growing illiteracy in America and around the world. That also got me to go into big stages to speak at TEDx, at the United Nations headquarters in New York, at leadership conferences around the world, including Paris. Now, equality does not begin in Parliament. It begins when love overrides judgment, fear, and expectation to conform. Now, it begins when someone says, "This pattern ends with me." And when you mean business and you are serious about ending these inherited patterns, this starts to affect your internal dialogue. My mother had mastered the art of internal dialogue, and so can you. And yes, you can, and I want to hear it from you. I can.
I can.
A bit louder. Yes, you can. I can. And here's the powerful truth that neuroscience gives us. The brain is plastic. Emotional patterns formed in childhood shape behavior and the way we show up in the world. As parents, as partners, as leaders, as friends, generations and decades later. But they are not destiny. They are programming. And programming can be rewritten. True prosperity is not income alone. It is emotional sovereignty. It is an aligned identity. It is building wealth without abandoning your authenticity. It is leadership without self-erasure. It is power integrated with integrity. You may ask why we must act now. Because daughters are watching. They are watching you. They are watching your every word. Not your speeches, not your policies, your behavior. Your inner self-talk, your inner dialogue. How you negotiate it, how you deal with the life predicaments, how you set boundaries in your relationship, in your profession, with yourself, how you speak about yourself when you fail, how you treat your own ambition. So if we want intergenerational equality, we must model it and program it. If we want prosperity, we must define it beyond money. And if we want impact, integrity, and inner freedom, we must investigate other key words, other key feelings, other key places we must enter in ourselves, in our own inner dialogue. My mother tasted the ocean and discovered it was salty. I discovered something else. Freedom has a taste to it. It has taste to it. It tastes like courage. It tastes like authenticity. It tastes like saying, I will not pass pain forward. I would not harbor internal self-negative dialogue, because inherited pain is powerful. So let's rewrite our brains, because it is about rewriting our brains. Let's rewrite the gender legacy across generations, not with blame, not with bitterness, but with awareness of our own internal dialogue, with curiosity and courage, with conscious leadership, so that one day every daughter will stand by her own ocean, taste the water, and realize who she truly is. She was never meant to shrink. She was meant to expand. She was meant to be free at all she can be. So let's move forward, women on earth. Let's stand firm, women on earth. Let's join our forces and make a stand for who you truly represent on earth, which is the children, the force that shapes families, cultures, and futures. I would like to thank you all, but most of all, I would like to thank my very dear late mother, who guided my life by changing her internal dialogue and gave me the chance to be all I can be. And my final message is simple and profound. A woman is the heartbeat of the earth, the original source code of love written into human form. And when we recognize her power and honor her, we transform the world she helps create. This is how we go from inherited pain to intentional prosperity, and how we rewrite the gender legacy generations. Thank you.